In the magnificent courtyards of China's imperial palaces, where dragon-carved columns reached toward heaven and gardens bloomed with rare flowers from across the empire, women lived lives of such profound terror that suicide became their most rational choice. The ornate beauty surrounding them served as cruel mockery of their circumstances, with every precious stone and silk thread representing the wealth extracted from families who had sold their daughters into this nightmare. The morning mist that drifted through bamboo groves carried the whispered prayers of women who had long ago stopped believing in salvation, their desperate pleas mixing with the sound of fountains that masked the screams echoing from punishment. Chambers, hidden beneath the palace foundations. For over 2,000 years, Chinese emperors maintained elaborate systems of female captivity that transformed young girls into human ornaments, breeding stock, and political pawns in games they could never understand or escape. The recently discovered archives of the Ming Dynasty reveal that Emperor Zhengde kept over 12,000 women in his palace complex, yet interacted meaningfully with fewer than 50 during his 16-year reign, leaving thousands to languish in forgotten quarters where they slowly went insane from isolation and despair. The documentation discovered in sealed chambers beneath the Summer Palace reveals a bureaucratic machine designed to process human suffering with administrative efficiency that would impress modern totalitarian regimes. Every aspect of these, women's existence was catalogued, monitored, and manipulated through systems so sophisticated that contemporary scholars struggle to comprehend the level of planning required to maintain such elaborate oppression across multiple generations of rulers. The imperial selection process epitomized the system's cruelty. Agents scoured villages throughout China seeking girls aged 12 to 16, prioritizing those from families desperate enough to believe that selling their daughters would bring honor and prosperity rather than condemning them to living deaths in golden cages. These children, celebrated in elaborate farewell ceremonies that masked the finality of their departure, embarked on journeys to the capital that claimed nearly 40% of their lives through suicide, disease, and despair before they ever glimpsed the palace walls. The survivors underwent systematic identity destruction through procedures that contemporary psychologists recognize as advanced brainwashing techniques. Forced abandonment of birth names, complete severance from family connections, and psychological conditioning that replaced independent thought with desperate dependence on imperial approval for basic survival needs. The medical examinations, conducted by teams of eunuch physicians, treated these young women like livestock being evaluated for breeding potential, with intimate procedures that violated every concept of human dignity while determining their placement within the palace hierarchy. The training programs that followed involved months of intensive indoctrination designed to transform vibrant teenagers into hollow vessels whose personalities had been carefully sculpted to satisfy imperial fantasies about perfect female submission and availability. The internal structure of imperial palaces created environments where survival required mastering skills that would challenge modern special forces operatives while maintaining appearances of delicate femininity that concealed hearts hardened by constant violence. The ranking system, with its dozens of elaborate titles and ceremonial distinctions, functioned primarily as a mechanism for creating competition so intense that women routinely murdered each other for privileges as minor as slightly better food. rations or access to warmer clothing during winter months. Empress Wu Zetian, the only woman to rule China in her own right, achieved power by eliminating over 60 rival women through methods that included poisoning their cosmetics, sabotaging their clothing with substances that caused fatal skin reactions, and orchestrating scandals that led to executions for imaginary crimes against imperial dignity. The daily routine followed patterns designed to maximize stress while maintaining the facade of luxury. Morning beauty preparations lasted 8 hours and involved procedures that were simultaneously torture sessions, with women forced to endure. Painful cosmetic applications, restrictive clothing that limited breathing, and hairstyles that caused permanent damage to necks and spines. Mealtimes became strategic battlegrounds where women competed for imperial attention through demonstrations of grace and refinement, while simultaneously attempting to poison rivals through contaminated food, infected utensils, and toxic substances mixed into communal dishes. The educational sessions that occupied afternoon hours transformed learning into psychological warfare through competitive exercises where women were required to humiliate classmates publicly, memorize literature that celebrated their own oppression, and demonstrate sexual techniques on practice equipment while being evaluated by panels of eunuchs who rated their performance with clinical detachment that reduced intimate human experiences to mechanical procedures designed for male entertainment. Evening selection processes created terror that exceeded anything found on actual battlefields, as women chosen for imperial encounters faced situations where success might elevate their status temporarily, while failure guaranteed immediate punishment, ranging from public beatings to execution, depending on the emperor's mood and political calculations. The violence within imperial palaces reached levels that shocked even hardened military officers accustomed to witnessing battlefield carnage and public executions throughout the empire. Competition for imperial favor created environments where women developed assassination techniques that impressed professional killers, poison delivery systems disguised as beauty accessories, weapons concealed within ceremonial clothing, and psychological manipulation strategies that could drive rivals to suicide while maintaining plausible deniability for their deaths. The palace workshops produced specialized tools designed specifically for female-on-female violence, hairpins with hollow centers for injecting toxins, jewelry with hidden blades for inflicting precise wounds, and cosmetic containers that concealed substances capable of causing blindness, paralysis, or organ failure depending on dosage and delivery method. Historical accounts document the case of noble consort Liu, who eliminated 18 competitors over 5 years using combinations of slow-acting poisons, manufactured evidence of treasonous activities, and seduction of key palace officials who helped fabricate charges against her enemies. The punishment protocols demonstrated systematic cruelty that revealed the calculated nature of oppression designed to break human spirits while preserving bodies for continued imperial use. Minor infractions resulted in graduated responses that began with reduced privileges and escalated through social isolation, assignment to degrading servant duties, and public humiliation ceremonies where other women were forced to participate in their peers' destruction as both punishment and loyalty demonstration. Serious offenses triggered more elaborate tortures. Women were confined in windowless cells for months, forced to consume human waste as punishment for imaginary crimes, or subjected to beating sessions administered by specially trained female guards who understood exactly how to inflict maximum pain without causing visible damage that might reduce the victim's value for future imperial encounters. The most severe punishments involved procedures that pushed beyond the boundaries of human endurance while maintaining the victim's outward appearance. Systematic bone breaking that healed incorrectly to cause permanent pain, deliberate infection with diseases that created prolonged suffering, and psychological torture involving the systematic destruction of everything the victim had ever loved or hoped to achieve in life. The long-term impact of these imperial systems created cultural attitudes that influenced Chinese society for centuries. Beyond the fall of the dynasties themselves, normalizing violence against women and establishing patterns of oppression that continue affecting millions of people across East Asia today. The psychological conditioning experienced by palace women created behavioral models that were transmitted to their children, perpetuating cycles of abuse that shaped everything from marriage customs to child-rearing practices throughout Chinese civilization. The documentation reveals that women who survived the imperial system often became the most violent enforcers of traditional gender roles in their later lives, having learned that female solidarity was fatal and that survival required embracing. The very oppression that had destroyed their own chances for happiness or fulfillment. Subscribe and share to discover more shocking connections between these historical atrocities and modern systems of exploitation that continue operating under different names, but with remarkably similar methods and outcomes. When archaeologists excavated the Forbidden City grounds in the 20th century, they uncovered mass burial sites containing over 8,000 women's remains, silent testimony to a system that consumed human lives while maintaining facades of cultural sophistication and moral authority that convinced the world that Chinese civilization represented the pinnacle of human achievement and wisdom.